All right, welcome back. And right now, our discussion is going to lead to the postseason. That's what we got into a little bit last segment. You think that the Rockets are going to be coming out of the West, are going to beat the Warriors, whereas you think the Warriors are going to come out of the West. And both of you, before we came back, both said that Celtics. You guys are leaning towards the Celtics to come out of the East with Kyrie and Jason Tatum and all them.
It's going to be just an absolute bloodbath. I think this is incredible for the league, what we have going on in the East this year. For the first time in probably 8 to 10 years, there are 4 teams in the East that I could legitimately see making a finals run. You got the Bucks, the Raptors, the Sixers, and the Celtics. And based on what I saw in the postseason last year, I see Jason Tatum stepping up big time. I see him becoming a different player. Jaylen Brown, who's had a down year this year, I think will turn up the intensity in playoffs. Couple that with the fact that you have Kyrie Irving, who made probably the clutchest shot in the history of the league, other than
Save LeBron's legacy,
yeah.
When you say.
Yeah, exactly. Him, Ray Allen, one of those two probably has the best shot in the history of the NBA. So you have those 3 guys. I think that's a really, really tough team to beat. But I think if anybody can do it, I think it's probably the Sixers. That starting 5 is just absolutely loaded with talent, and it's hard for me to see somebody beating them, but if anybody will, I think it'll be the
That's how you feel about Celtics
one
in the
little
East?
side point I will say, it's funny to think that without Ray Allen, arguably Chris Bosh, and Kyrie Irving, that LeBron would have 1 ring, and that's crazy. But as far as the East is concerned, the Raptors, I mean, they seem like the best team overall, just because of what we've seen with them. It's Kawhi Leonard's team right now, and although, he's made comments about originally not wanting to be in Toronto, he's really helped these guys. Kyle Lowry has always been a great scorer, but in the playoffs, Lowry has struggled, and that's why I'm still very, very hesitant on the Raptors. Adding a guy like Gasol can be big, but I'm not necessarily buying into them. The Sixers I have the same issue with, because on paper, the Sixers should be the best team in the East. They should be representing the Eastern Conference in the finals this year. But I thought that last year, too. They went into the playoffs, I believe it was a 16-game win streak, and then they got beat by the Celtics. They were destroyed by the Celtics. Yeah. So until I see guys like Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid step up when it matters the most and take that next level, Jimmy Butler as well, former Bull, I'm not completely buying into them either. The Bucks just seem like I list them right now as probably the 5th best team in the NBA, but again, playoffs, as you know, are a much different story. Bucks, whenever they've been without Giannis, especially without Chris Middleton, they're not very good. Yeah. They're very subpar. So,
which is why he's the MVP in the league this year.
And now,
make the case, but as far as who's coming out of the East, I think you got to go with the Celtics, because I think that they have the best coach out of all of them.
Absolutely.
I think they have the most experience. Guys like Marcus Smart, guys like Jaylen Brown, who you mentioned struggled this year, can step up. Jason Tatum, Kyrie Irving, on paper.
Not to mention Gordon Hayward, who looks like he's really starting to get back to his own self, which is just a really, really good sign for Celtics fans everywhere.
So, I think the Celtics are probably coming out of the East. I think the only difference me and Sam have is I think the Rockets are coming out of the West this year, because they were 1 game away from doing it last year. Without Chris Paul getting injured, they would have closed it out in 6 games. The Warriors were reeling. They had no answers.
Okay.
They had no answers.
Well, so first of all...
first off, before you begin, I see your little top 5 NBA over here, and you don't even have the Warriors in the top 5.
Well, the Warriors had 1. The Rockets I don't have in the top 5, because right now you're factoring.
Oh, this is the Warriors. I thought it said Houston. Excuse me, but
no. Yeah, the Rockets I have probably about 7th.
Okay.
Because you're without Chris Paul, who struggled with the hamstring all year, and Clint Capella, who's easily a top 5 center in the league, who was also having his best season of the year, or of his career, 17.6 points and 12.6 rebounds before he got hurt.
So why do you think though that Houston's gonna beat the Warriors in the West, or do you think there's another team? Because Houston right now is the 5th seed, so they would be meeting the Warriors in the second round.
Correct.
I
think seeding's bound to change.
Yeah, and there's really no other. I mean, you have LeBron out in the West, but they're not even in playoff contention. There's really nobody else that has any star players right now except for Houston that could really compete with the
They're not getting
Warriors.
Anthony Davis. I've never been less threatened by a LeBron-led team.
Absolutely. He might. I don't even.
They'll make the playoffs in my opinion, but I honestly could. If they play the Warriors for sure, it's over. They'll get swept easily.
Absolutely.
They don't have another guy outside of LeBron who can really get the job. I mean, they have some okay players, but I mean, honestly,
of these guys are developing as they would hope.
And not only that, but if you're any of these guys, if you're Ingram, if you're Lonzo Ball, if you're one of those guys, like how upset are you? LeBron just tried to trade everybody.
Chemistry's gone.
He just tried to trade everybody on the team. Like, you're probably not even mentally all there in it.
Yeah,
like,
it was very, very
Kuzma,
clear from the front office in Los Angeles that every player on the team that's not named LeBron James is absolutely expendable. and can absolutely be thrown in a trade for a guy like Anthony Davis. What that does to a team is incredibly detrimental. What that does to the locker room, there's no real coming back from that. Everybody's always kind of sleeping with one eye open. They're not really sure. They're playing nervous. They're playing to prove themselves. They're not just playing basketball to play basketball anymore.
And when LeBron throws you under the bus like he always does, I mean,
exactly.
that
I think it's very, very difficult to see the Lakers making it to the postseason. And if they do make it to the postseason, I would be shocked if they won in the first round. That's just because there's too much turmoil in that locker room. There's too much going on in all of these younger guys' heads. LeBron's getting older, and I'm not saying LeBron's not going to be playoff LeBron this year, but when you got all these young guys that aren't really ready for this moment, they've never been there before. See, the Cavs, they were a really bad team last year, but they had some guys that had been there before. They had some guys that were experienced and knew what that stage took and what it took to get to a championship level ball club. Whereas this year, there's guys that just they've never been there.
They don't know what's going on.
They've never even made it to the playoffs, much less an actual finals. And now here we are, and I don't see LeBron making the playoffs this year for the first time in a long time.
I do agree with you that if the Lakers do, they'll get swept by the Warriors. But let's talk about the Warriors. Like, who do you think's gonna be able to
we're both
knock them out of the playoffs this year?
Celtics. I think the Rockets beat the Celtics in 7 games in the finals this year. I just think that, and again, I'm sure you watched the entire series like I did last year. The Warriors had no answer for the pick and roll play alone. I mean, it was give and go. The Rockets were on absolute fire. The Warriors had no answers. Chris Paul was the prayer the Warriors asked for because once he was out, they dominated. I'm pretty sure they were both blowouts, game 6 and 7. They were pretty decisive. Without Chris Paul, he had so much to that team. And again, he's been hurt this year, and that's why they're a 5 seed, as you mentioned.
So just real quick, is Chris Paul being out the reason that the Rockets shot 27 from 3-point in game 7?
No, not at all. But
Okay.
but it does matter. It's like if you took Curry. I mean, again, they need those 3 guys. They need Paul to be healthy. They need Capella to be healthy, and they need Harden to be healthy. Outside of that, Eric Gordon's good, but he's banged up this year. He's a solid bench player.
He's had to step up to as he was last year.
And he's had to step up to a starting role this year. He's not meant to be a starter. He's meant to be a 6-man off the bench. You take a guy's role like that and change it, it doesn't work out. I just think that adding Capella, not only the stats he puts up, but also his presence on the inside, I think that he could absolutely body up Boogie Cousins. I think it'd be a good matchup. I think Chris Paul and Steph Curry would go at it again. I give slight edge to Curry because he's overall better, but Chris Paul is hungry for a ring. And, I mean, Harden, who's going to guard him come playoff time? If he puts up 40, 10, and 10, I mean, who's stopping the Rockets right now?
Okay, so here's my response to that. First of all, let's get away from just the top 3 guys. Let's say Chris Paul's playing just as well as he was last year. Harden continues to play at the level that he's playing at right now. And Clint Capella, plays the best basketball of his career. Outside of those top 3 guys, why were the Rockets close to beating the Warriors last year? They had Trevor Ariza, who was playing really well.
Yeah.
They had P.J. Tucker,
who's a good player in general.
Yeah, they had P.J. Tucker, who was hitting 80% of his threes, for Christ's sake. Like, he was going off.
He's still a good player.
Yeah, he is still a good player, but he's not the player that he was last year. Eric Gordon is not putting up the numbers that he was last year. The only chance that the Rockets have to beat the Warriors is if their role players play incredibly. Because I understand you think Harden's the best player in the league, but you're not telling me that James Harden, Chris Paul, and Clint Capella are better than Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, and
in
Boogie
theory,
Cousins.
no. But last year alone proved that they could.
But that was before. Before Boogie was even there. First of all, and that was with all.
How much
of
do
their
you think
role
Boogie
players.
adds to a team that's already this good, though?
He adds a lot because he's the presence that they've never had.
And do you think he'll stay healthy?
Presence.
Those Achilles injuries are no joke.
I understand that, but I think with what I've seen from DeMarcus Cousins since he has made his return a little over a month ago now, it's a slow process. The Warriors actually just came out recently and said that they're going to start increasing his minutes now. It's a slow process for him to get back to the player he was, and I'm not even necessarily certain that he will do that this year with the Warriors, but they don't need that. They need him to be an upgrade from JaVale McGee, and he has already been that and then some. That's the point. JaVale McGee is a starting center on a championship-winning team, and then that becomes DeMarcus Cousins. You can't tell me that that's not significant improvement in that respect.
Obviously, neither one of us is changing our opinion. We got to close this show up, as I know. But I do want to say I think the Rockets will beat the Warriors in 7 games. I think they beat the Celtics in 7 games. I think Harden gets his first ring. I think he wins the MVP. Much better than Curry. And I got you a little something too, Sam.
All right.
There you go.
So you think Houston in 7 against the Celtics? That we said?
Yeah, I think 7 against the Warriors and 7 against the Celtics.
What say you?
I'm going to say that the Warriors are going to beat the Philadelphia 76ers in 6. I'm confident in the Celtics. I think they should get there. I want them to get there, but I'm not quite sold on it quite yet. Another thing that I will say before we close out this show is I don't even think if one team is going to beat the Warriors out in the West, it is not going to be Houston. It is going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder, and let me tell you why. They have Russell Westbrook, who is, I'm not big on what Russell Westbrook, but he is still a very good
Talk
point
about
guard.
selfish
He
players.
is still, yeah, absolutely, but he is still a very good player. He has conceded a little bit of that superstar role to Paul George this year, and Paul George is playing by miles the best basketball I've ever seen Paul George play. That's a significant factor. Another thing, Steven Adams, I think, is a very, very underrated player.
Underrated.
Very underrated player, and he's the type of guy that I've seen give the Warriors fits down low for 5 or 6 years now. He is a really, really good player. I think in terms of matchups, the Thunder match up against the Warriors better than anybody else in the West does, but I still think that's no match because Kevin Durant is better than Paul George. Steph Curry is better than Russell Westbrook. Marcus Cousins is better than Steven Adams. And then you have Clay and Draymond. There's nobody that will beat the Warriors this year. The Warriors will win their third
Kevin
straight
Durant.
championship. You can book that right
Kevin
now.
Durant better than Steph Curry and Harden better than both of them.
So we have Houston and James Harden winning their first
Ring this
first
year,
ring this
absolutely.
year, and you got the Warriors doing a
Steph Curry
three-peat.
gets his
And
first MVP in the finals.
all right, well,
You heard it here first. guys.
that'll do
Mark it
it.
down.
That'll do it on Showtime Sports Squabble. Thanks for joining in, and have a good one.